Hey guys, it's Syama here, CEO of Scaling Retail, and I'm so excited to be joining my lovely friend Tim Moore from Hilldun as we have a few minutes over here at the Cabana show to talk a little bit about factoring, financing, and really how on earth brands are going to be able to scale up and grow 2021 and beyond. Tim, thank you for joining me.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Of
This
course,
is amazing.
of course. I cannot believe we're at a trade show.
I know. An impromptu interview at a trade show. It's
I know.
Amazing.
I love it. It's fantastic. You know, I find that today coming into the show, I was wondering what are we going to see? Are there going to be buyers? Who's showing? How is this really going to pan out? And I have to say, I've been so impressed by what I've been seeing here at Cabana that I actually feel like retail is turning, it's turning a leaf right now. What are your feelings on that?
I mean, our numbers are up, way up. Our brand's numbers are up. The orders are strong. Shipping is strong. I mean, I hear a lot now, buy now. People are looking for merchandise right now, and brands just don't have it. And that's one of the issues also. I mean, so they're predicting in the down the road, it's going to continue to go well, and the stores are ordering very strong.
It's really amazing. You know, I feel like there's just such a hesitancy to wanting it to be a rebound and then being scared that it's not a rebound and, kind of starting to figure out with all these new variations of, COVID, how do we manage things? And personally, I know a lot of our brands who have been producing internationally have been struggling right now with receiving goods on time and kind of working with stores in that manner. So from your background, as to what you're seeing right now, your clients who are manufacturing overseas, are they late on their deliveries right now? How is that impacting factoring? How is that impacting store relationships?
I mean, it's a good question because every country's kind of gone in and out of this COVID at different times, right? So China was first, production was impossible. It got back to normal. Production's been pretty good there. Then India got hit really hard. Their production was very difficult for a period of time. Then they started rebounding. So I think every country's been a little bit different, and the brands have had to move around. More brands have called me about doing production in the United States than I've ever before. They're looking for that alternative, and it's really smart because they need quick turn of product. They need to get product out the door. They can't have the long lead times. They're moving production to LA, a lot of it.
That's insane. I feel like often when I'm working with brands, they are asking me about production, and I have to say, I'm a cost of goods junkie, and so I get really scared with domestic manufacturing, even though from a sales delivery standpoint, it's actually super, super smart. I just get worried about rising cost of labor. Right. I get worried about, kind of what the minimums look like. And, it's, for me, I feel like domestic is so good on so many factors. And then when it comes to scaling and and really blowing it out of the park, I find that domestic is pretty challenging.
Very true.
How are you finding in terms of brands managing just cash given these kinds of difficulties with getting goods to retail stores? I mean, how are they handling cash flow? How are they looking to you guys as partners? What are you guys able to, help solve for with these brands who are oh my gosh, things are still so in flux?
Well, I mean, we had to be through whole COVID, we had to be very forgiving. We had to, when everything was in production and we were doing production financing and that production didn't happen, we had to sit there and wait for everything to get caught up. And it's still kind of going on because these brands, they felt from a year ago now when we were all shut down, they felt that they all took a hit. But so a lender really had to be very understanding and working very closely with them in order to continue to get production done, continue to grow. Because without growth, without getting production out the door, without getting sales, there's no money coming back in to pay anybody back.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so I guess as you're kind of looking at how brands are doing a mix of wholesale and e-com and really just how, Hilldun's business model has changed in terms of, working with brands in all these different capacities, what are the best ways for brands to take advantage of partnerships with working at a company like yours?
Well, I mean, one of the biggest things we've launched is direct-to-consumer financing.
Tell me more about that.
Yeah, it's been by far one of the better received programs. It's basically a line of credit built just basically on their direct consumer business. And since there's ways of capturing all that money that's coming through the direct consumer business, it's a constant repayment of that line of credit. So it operates just like a line of credit. costs a little bit more in the bank, but it's not unreasonable.
Yep.
And it's especially for small businesses who don't have the option to get a very big bank loan, but they need to build that inventory for that direct consumer business. These lines of credit, they function very well. They're relatively inexpensive compared to most options, and they help build inventory, help keep the inventory levels high.
I find that is really a challenge for a lot of small direct-to-consumer brands. You know, this idea of, even with one client I have right now, it's like, how do we actually build in the right number of units to have on hand for her direct-to-consumer sales? She's a small company, she's self-financing. So how do you build up enough inventory so that you actually have a strong enough presentation to then throw the marketing and advertising dollars towards, to then be able to kind of build this customer, but you can't hit, 300 units,
right,
or 1,000 units,
Yeah.
right? She's looking mostly at, 100 units,
right.
And so there's this like sticking point, and I think it's really valuable that there are services like, financing against direct-to-consumer businesses that I think is really pivotal to help many of these businesses now who are trying to figure out, like, what is business going to look like? How do I kind of manage inventory positioning?
That's right. It's difficult, very much so. It's like you have the wholesale business drawing all the cash out in big lump sums, because usually it's how the wholesale business works. You get a lot of orders, then you got to ship it. Usually there's a lead time for production, when the money's coming out. Every business kind of varies.
Sure.
But for the direct consumer, it's a little bit more, direct consumer business, a little bit more predictable, and usually working with a regular line of credit that can just keep that inventory at a level which makes sense, but have that financed separately. It makes total sense for a brand.
Yeah, of course. As you're kind of looking to the future of kind of how business is shifting, right? It's like, I almost feel like this past year there was so much ambiguity, right? It was like, what's happening in the market, what brands are going to do well. I almost feel like 2020 was the year where if you did not have like cash in the bank already and like a strong business model, you basically were a goner, right?
True.
I mean, it was like if you did not have a sound business model, and unfortunately, I think a lot of retailers did not have sound business models.
That's right.
As well as brands, but definitely retailers, I think, started to understand where the holes were in their market. So even as you guys are looking at these different retailers, having a brick and mortar and having e-commerce at the same time, right? How are you kind of looking at even the revenue streams of retailers right now?
I mean, it's interesting because retail, on a specialty store level, they were able to pivot very quickly. I think especially store level, they were able to pivot quickly. They were able to pull business through their e-com channels very quickly, and they didn't have a massive overhead. So those are able to pull in enough income either through their e-com levels or just through their, once we opened back up, people did go out and shop. It wasn't like people stopped shopping. If anything, they did go out and shop. That's what really made them rebound, because it was the only thing open that was available for people to actually do as an activity.
Sure.
So if you really look at the retail world, it was the one thing that kind of opened up, and it was the one thing that brought in revenue the quickest.
Got it.
And as long as they had enough to be able to keep enough on their floor to make it attractive for somebody to come in, I think they did a pretty good job.
Got it.
On a department store level, I think that's a little different story. Much bigger animal, much more overhead, many more moving parts, mall-based stores, and they didn't rebound right away as quickly. I think that the answer to that question, on a specialty store level, I think a lot of them rebounded. If they were in dire straits, they were probably in really dire straits, like you just said before.
Yep.
But if they were at least even or doing okay, or at least had everything under control, they did actually pretty well coming out of this.
Awesome, that's great. And as you're kind of looking to the future, Tim, parting words for brands out there that are starting to grow. They're launching, they're growing their businesses. What are some parting words of wisdom in terms of how they should be looking at the future of this industry, and also future of partnerships, right? When's a good time to make friends with Tim?
I think, well, first making friends with Tim, I think that you should have a serious conversation about financing options even before you launch your brand, so you can set your brand up, you set your production up, set your store base up, set the parameters for your business so it can be financed at some point. It doesn't have to be now, but you just got to understand the options for financing, and then you can set your business up that way. And if you're already going, even more so, understanding what your financing options are so you know which way to pivot your business and how to finance it. If you decide to go strong in e-com, okay, these are options for financing it. If you decide to go strong in department stores, these are options for financing. If you take your production and you move it from domestic overseas or vice versa, these are your options for financing it. So understanding all that, I think everybody should understand it.
So everyone should be friends with Tim and me.
100%.
Tim takes cocktails. I take wires. Amazing.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you so much for your time and energy. Guys, such valuable insight from our friend Tim Moore. I think it's so important to understand what your financing options are. I think one of the key highlights really is, build a sound business model, develop partnerships early, look into your domestic production as well as international. I think backups are really kind of just knowing what your optionality is in terms of getting goods to the retailers and really having a multi-pronged distribution strategy.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
It's just,
only way these days.
Yeah, it's like we always knew that was the case, but I think last year just really highlighted if you have to have a wholesale, have to have a direct-to-consumer model, and if you don't, right, I mean, we've clearly seen this pandemic is not over, and there will be other natural disasters and things to happen, and to rely solely on one revenue stream. And even as we close, even now with like the Facebook advertising debacle, with Apple phones, right? I mean, if you are solely a DTC business, you are now having issues when it comes to your return on advertising spend for Facebook ads. So anyone who does not also have a wholesale channel and is only pure play online is also getting shot in the foot right now. So thanks guys for watching.
Thanks for having me.
Of course, pleasure always, Tim. Guys, hope you have a wonderful day. Please make sure you send us an email at hello@scalingretail.com to understand your options and how to grow and scale your fashion business. Talk to you later. Bye.
Bye-bye.